Hey, what's up Invincible fans? Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If this is your first time here, my name is Jonathan, and today I'm going to show you how I printed and painted. So this file came in 7 different parts that I had to glue together. It was the head, the torso, the legs, and then both arms and both feet. There were some gaps in the figure left, mostly between the torso and the legs, that I had to go in and fill. I used wood filler for that, and it was the first time I ever used wood filler, and I'd really recommend it. I'm just showing off some of the areas that I had to fill, kind of like the arch right here. And after I filled them, you really can't even tell there was ever a gap there. The instructions said, I believe, to let it dry an hour or two, but I let it dry overnight just to be safe, and then I sanded it down, and I thought it came out great. The leg right there was a little bumpy, but you're not going to see that anyway. So, in painting, there's a technique called the zenithal highlight, which is basically naturally shading your model, and that's what I'm trying to do here, but I'm kind of doing it the opposite. Typically, you would prime your model black and then highlight it with white. I did the opposite. I primered with white, and then now I'm trying to go in with a little bit of black shading. But I would soon realize that I'm kind of wasting my time because I'm going to go over the entire, well, not the entire, but most of the model with the black Vallejo here. There's a little bit of overspray where his chest is eventually going to be yellow, so I have to go back because you cannot do yellow over black, or you get the little green section here you see on Batman's belt. Kind of found out that the hard way. So I'm going to use this Vallejo Game Color White, and I'm just going to basically go back over what's going to be yellow with the white. I'm still trying to kind of master my craft in hand painting. This is only the second model I've ever done, so getting the straight lines on this part was a little bit of a task, but it wasn't that bad, and I think we did pretty good and made it work. We're going to use this Game Color Sun Yellow for all the yellow sections on Invincible. That's his chest and his hands. And I was a little bit worried about taping it off since, as you can see here, the chest isn't a perfectly straight line, so I thought it'd be easier just to hand paint it. I think I did maybe 2, maybe 3 coats. Another tip from a novice painter: when you're painting models, try to use a matte clear coat about as often as you can, because when you do get these finer lines like I'm doing here, and if you color outside the line a time or two like I did, you can always go back with a little bit of water or a little bit of thinner and take that little spot right off of your model. Just a quick break. If you're enjoying the video, please be sure to hit that subscribe button along with the like button. It helps the algorithm and it helps push the video out a little bit. I'm not as worried about taping off the hands as I was the chest, but the yellow I'm using is not a airbrush paint, so I'm just mixing a little bit of the yellow with equal parts a little bit of paint thinner, and then I'm going to start applying to the hands. Now he does wear a kind of fingerless glove, so I am going to have to go back later and apply a skin tone color to his fingers, but as Bane said, that comes later. For this upper chest area, we're going to use Light Sea Blue by Vallejo, and this is a airbrush paint, but instead of taping everything off, we'll just apply it by hand. And this paint went on really well, to the point that I only had to do 1, maybe 2 coats, and then I went back a third time and just touched up a couple areas that just needed to be touched up. And then the head and neck area of his mask are also yellow, so that gets the same treatment. I had specifically bought this color paint for the boots so that I could airbrush it, but it went on so well on the shoulders that I ended up just doing the same thing here. 1 or 2 coats and then maybe a third coat just to go over and touch up any areas that needed to be touched up. For the hair, I went back with that same Model Air black, and I wanted to be super careful not to get it on the suit, because like I talked about earlier, if you get black on yellow, then you have a whole problem on your hands. But luckily for me, I did not make any errors. So the next thing up was to add some shadows, and there's a couple different ways you could do that, but I wanted to use pastels because that's what I wanted to do, and I had never done them before. But I used some brown pastel just to get into the shadows of the 6-pack or 8-pack. And then I moved up to the upper chest slash neck area and applied some more brown. And I don't think I got it on video, but I also applied some black to the shadows of the blue sections. For the eyes, I had intended on using this game color silver, but after looking at some reference images, I think it was more of a off-white or light gray. So I went with this color, and then I applied to the eyes. 1 or 2 coats is all this took. This Vallejo game color covers very, very well, and I like it a lot. So now it's time to do the skin. So I mixed a various amount of these 5 colors to make this color. And then here's a lighter look at that color. And then I put 2 coats of the paint on all the skin areas, which was the face. And then he has some of those little fingerless gloves, so I put some on there too. I mixed these 3 reds together, and then I kind of lightly went over the face of the model, added to the lips, and then around the corners of the nose and on the chin and on the cheeks, just areas that you typically would see have a little bit of a red tone. I really just went to town on the base because there wasn't very many textures already built into it. There was a little bit mainly on the big rock where Invincible stands, but I started with a matte black primer, and then I used this very, very dark gray, and I tried to use a bit of a stippling effect and just kind of work my colors up from a darker to a lighter, almost a white. And then trying to add even more depth to it, I would, after the stippling effect, I would take that little sponge you see me working and take off some of the paint. So you see how it's heavy with the white, and then I use the sponge to take it off and just add a little bit of depth and some rock marks to it, I guess. I also gave the beam and those other little things, I don't really know what they are, like little wires, I guess, a silver base coat. And then once I was happy with where I was, this was the final product for at least inside of the base. For the outside of the base, I used this little rust color. This was also a Vallejo paint, but I didn't like the way this one went on in comparison to the other ones. It took quite a few coats, but once I was happy with where it was, I went over the entire base with a black wash. And I didn't have any intention of doing this, but I thought it looked cool, and I probably ended up going a little bit overboard. But I took that same silver that I had a little bit earlier and just kind of went over the edges and then kind of overdid the middle of the base just to leave some scratch marks or other little details like that. And the final thing I did that I also thought would look cool is I tried to mimic blood spatter, but it doesn't really show up in the video here, but it will show up in the final reveal.